So how should you allocate your tracks when working with sound effects? Should you put them all on the same Pro Tools track, lined up end to end? If you want them to all sound exactly like you found them, no effects, no ambience, just like you found it, or if you want them all to sound the same, have the same sound effect or ambience, then that's an efficient use of the space. Put them all back to back. You would then insert the reverb plugin on that track, or better still, send them to the aux and then use the bus system to route them to the aux input that holds the reverb plugin. And then they would all get the same treatment. But if you plan to process individual sounds, you want them to be on their own tracks. Now, does that mean that every single sound effect gets its own track? You might wind up with a kind of an unmanageable edit window. So let's do an exercise I think will help you think of your sounds in groups. So I've opened this session called Phone Effects. And let's say we have a scene with two people on the phone talking to one another. One camera is in the room with person A, and one camera is in the room with person B. So now we have four combinations of audio. We have the room sound of person A talking, and the room sound of person B talking, and then we have A's perception of B's voice through A's phone, and the same thing for B. So if we need the reaction shot of B hearing A, then we'll use the shot of B, but we need to hear A like B is hearing A, so we set up a simple phone type filter on a track. So I'm jumping to the mix window, and you could go to the inserts and set up an EQ and choose a one band and make that a high pass, and add another one and make it a low pass, and try and imitate a phone. But there's a new EQ plugin called Channel Strip. And when we pull that up and go to where the presets live, up here, you can see that they've given us one for telephone. So down here at the bottom, you can see that they've rolled off all the bottom. And here's how this sounds. If I turn on my voice here, you get a full register, full fidelity version of my voice. And if I turn on my track here, you see that my voice is now going through that telephone filter, and all the bottom is rolled off and the highs are boosted just a little. So that's the idea. And I'll get my production dialog here. It'll show up as one big piece, and then I would just make an edit wherever I needed it and drag the piece to where it needed to be. So let's do an exercise where I think we can move the dialog from one place to the other and pretend like we're getting a reaction shot from a different place. So let's do an exercise where I think we can move the dialog from one place to the other. All we want to do is cut here, cut there, move this straight down to there, and take a listen. So let's do an exercise where I think we can move the dialog from one place to the other and pretend like we're getting a reaction shot from. And we would do the same thing for B, and now the sounds sound like they would sound if we actually had cameras in the room monitoring those phone sounds. Now, we see this all the time in the movies. There's a very nice scene in the movie Hitch with Will Smith. There's another one in the movie Babel with Brad Pitt. And we're not stuck with that phone sound, obviously. Let me jump back to the mix window and show you that there's a different one in the 7-band EQ. Go to factory default. There are lots of things here that we're going to use in music, but down here in special effects, there are some different processors here. Here's one called Cellphone. Again, chopping off the highs, chopping off the lows, and boosting the sort of 3K to 5K area here. And when you find one you like, you can save it. I found a telephone that I like. I saved it with my initials, so it shows up here in the list. And it's a very simple highs and lows here. Let's look at the one that it came from. Now you might be wondering, well, why isn't he using that send and bus system on this EQ? Fair question. The auxes tend to be for plugins where you want a little bit of something, like a little bit of reverb, a little bit of delay. But in the case of EQ, we don't want a little bit. We either want it to sound like it's in the room or on the phone. It's more binary than it is with shading plugins like reverbs and delays. So that's a bit about dialogue in the context of sound design, and next up we'll work with sound effects.